Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we read through St. Faustina's diary. Join me, Amy Thomas, each day for a short reading out of the diary which brought us a deeper understanding of Christ's divine mercy. Hello, Catholic pilgrims. Welcome to day 106 of our readings from St. Faustina's diary. I hope by now that you've been with me for 106 days. I hope that this has become just a part of your life, listening to the readings from her diary and tuning in each day to hear what Christ has to say to her. I really hope that it has become kind of like a habit. And I was just thinking the other day that when this all ends in December, it's going to feel like a part of me has been lost or something, because I've gotten so used to reading through her diary every day and making a podcast and seeing the comments and messages that I get from you all. It really has been such a great pilgrimage. And with that, we will get started today on Notebook 1. Our numbers are going to be 450 through 455. Nocturnal Adoration. I was suffering very much, and it seemed to me I would not be able to make my adoration. But I gathered up all my willpower, and although I collapsed in my cell, I paid no attention to what ailed me, for I had the passion of Jesus before my eyes. When I entered the chapel, I received an inner understanding of the great reward that God is preparing for us, not only for our good deeds, but also for our sincere desire to perform them. What a great grace of God this is! Oh, how sweet it is to toil for God and souls! I want no respite in this battle, but I shall fight to the last breath for the glory of my King and Lord. I shall not lay the sword aside until he calls me before his throne. I fear no blows, because God is my shield. It is the enemy who should fear us, and not we him. Satan defeats only the proud and the cowardly, because the humble are strong. Nothing will confuse or frighten a humble soul. I have directed my flight at the very center of the sun's heat, and nothing can lower its course. Love will not allow itself to be taken prisoner. It is free like a queen. Love attains God. Once after Holy Communion, I heard these words: "You are our dwelling place." At that moment, I felt in my soul the presence of the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I felt that I was the temple of God. I felt I was a child of the Father. I cannot explain all this, but the Spirit understands it well. Oh, infinite goodness, how low you stoop to your miserable creature. If only souls would become recollected, God would speak to them at once, for dispensation drowns out the word of the Lord. On one occasion the Lord said to me, "Why are you fearful, and why do you tremble when you are united to me? I am displeased when a soul yields to vain terrors. Who will dare to touch you when you are with me? Most dear to me is the soul that strongly believes in my goodness and has complete trust in me. I heap my confidence upon it and give it all it asks." Once the Lord said to me, "My daughter, take the graces that others spurn. Take as many as you can carry." At that moment, my soul was inundated with the love of God. I feel that I am united with the Lord so closely that I cannot find words to express that union. In this state, I suddenly feel that all the things God has, all the goods and treasures, are mine, although I set little store by them, for He alone is enough for me. In Him I see my everything. Without Him, nothing. I look for no happiness beyond my own interior where God dwells. I rejoice that God dwells within me. Here I abide with Him unendingly. It is here that my greatest intimacy with Him exists. Here I dwell with Him in safety. Here is a place not probed by the human eye. The Blessed Virgin encourages me to commune with God in this way. When some suffering afflicts me, it no longer causes me any bitterness, nor do great consolations carry me away. I am filled with the peace and equanimity that flow from the knowledge of the truth. How can living surrounded by unfriendly hearts do me any harm when I enjoy full happiness within my soul? Or how can having kind hearts around me help me when I do not have God within me? When God dwells within me, who can harm me? When I was in college, my sophomore year, I cleaned people's houses for my job. And it was not my favorite, but I needed to make money. And I had another friend who had too many houses. And so she was willing to give me some of hers so that, everybody could be supported. Mostly the houses that I cleaned were for elderly people that needed the help. And I would go in either once a week or every other week and clean their homes for them, change their sheets, and vacuum and dust and all those different things. And one lady that I helped, she was physically disabled, so I would come in and help her. And sometimes I felt more like just a companion to her than really a housekeeper. Her house was pretty spotless because she didn't really do anything in it. Her husband worked and he was rarely home, and so she was at home. She could move around and stuff, but she did have a disability. But she always just wanted to sit and have, snacks and a drink and just kind of talk. Another house that I cleaned was a lady who was not elderly, but she had 13 Persian cats in a trailer home. And oh my gosh, the hair that was everywhere just about suffocated me. And I love cats, but that's a story for another day. One of the couples that I cleaned for were relatively young. They were retired, but they weren't, in their 90s or anything. And they had been retired for a couple of years, and they both were, healthy. Both could move around just fine. But what made me so sad about them is that they had seemed to utterly give up on living. They were very nice people. I always enjoyed visiting with them. I could never get the forks right in the dishwasher though for the for the husband. He always had to come and correct me. I could never remember which way he wanted them to go. But anyway, they would sit literally all day in front of the TV and watch MASH reruns. And when I would show up, I would talk with them a little bit and I'd about to cleaning. And at some point during my cleaning, the husband would come and ask me if I would join him in like their family room area because he had something he wanted to show me. And so I would follow him in there, and he would sometimes get out like his military medals or show me pictures of when he was younger. And he asked me one day if I would help him clear out his storage shed that was outside. And I said, well, I would have to come more often, so it would require more money if you're willing to do that. And he said that was fine. And so I started coming over a little bit more, and he was dragging boxes out of the storage shed. And I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't there to help him clean out his storage shed. What he wanted to do was go over his life with me. And it really honestly broke my heart because he was so desperate for his life to have meaning and to have purpose that he needed to show this college student all of his, awards and what he had done in his life. And, anytime that he was recognized for something important, he pulled it out of the box and he would tell me this story. And so literally I would be there for, a couple of hours listening to his stories. And I was okay with that. And I stopped charging him money because I felt really bad for doing that, just listening to this guy. But I realized this was something that he desperately needed. And I would go home and I would tell my roommates that, it made me really sad that this couple who seemed, relatively young, they were both healthy, they were retired, but it was almost as if they saw that their life just didn't matter anymore. And so today, when I was reading Sister Faustina, where she says, "Oh, how sweet it is to toil for God and souls. I want no respite in this battle, but I shall fight to the last breath for the glory of my King and Lord." For some reason, that couple popped into my head when I read that. And the reason they did is because I felt so much like they had just kind of given up on living. And it seems like in our culture, like once you retire, then you're just kind of set, on the back burner. When my father-in-law retired from the military, I found him outside a little bit before his retirement ceremony, and he was just kind of walking around in his uniform in the front yard, and he looked kind of downcast and sad. And I said, "Is everything okay?" And he looked at me and he said, "I just feel like an old horse put out to pasture." And I honestly didn't know what to say to that. But I have told my kids over the years, thinking back to what my father-in-law said and to that couple that I used to clean house for, the entirety of your life has meaning and purpose. Just because you retire from paid work does not mean that the end is near and that all is lost. And I think what we have to remember is to the very last breath that God grants us, we can do good in this world. We don't know how long our lives are going to last, and none of us are guaranteed 100 plus years. And so really, we have to make every moment count, every day count. When we're young and we're children, our lives have purpose and meaning. When we're young and in college or just starting our families, our lives have purpose and meaning. When we hit middle age and our kids are getting older, our lives have purpose and meaning. When the kids move out and we become empty nesters, our lives have purpose and meaning. And when we stop working for payment, our lives still have purpose and meaning. And even if we're 90 years old and we can't walk very well anymore and we have to have people do stuff for us, our lives still have purpose and meaning. To the last breath, we can fight the good fight. And what made me so sad about that couple that I cleaned house for is they didn't realize that. And that's why the husband was so desperate to have me understand that yes, his life had meaning. But it still did. And I wished I could have explained that to him and told him that. I've reflected upon that time a lot since I've gotten older and stopped cleaning their house, realizing what was really going on there. I mean, I understood it at the time, but I understand it more now, and I'm glad that I gave him that time. But it really is true. Even if you're retired, or if you think someday down the line, oh gosh, when I retire, my life will just kind of be over and I'll just be sitting around waiting to die. No, no, that is not true. Even if you have health issues, and you can't, maybe travel like you want to or do all the things you want to when you retire, that suffering that you're going through can be offered for souls, and it will be meritorious. And you can pray. You can do a rosary. You can go to mass. You can volunteer. There is so much that you can do. And I don't want anybody to ever forget that. And I've told my kids, if I ever get to the point where, I get to, 65 and I'm like, oh, my life is over. This is the end. You just hit me upside the head and say, no, Mom, remember what you told us? Our lives have purpose for the entirety of our lives. And that is the truth. So I will see you back here, Catholic Pilgrims, for day 107. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.